ADHD reWired, episode 468. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. Today we have our live Q&A. I am joined by the ADHD reWired panel of panelists. I didn't even know where I was going as soon as I opened my mouth. So let's start with MJ. Hello, MJ.
Hi, Happy New Year. How's it going? I need to go feed my dog because she won't stop bugging me.
All right. So hello to MJ and MJ's dog who's about to get fed. And we have Will Kerb of Hacking Your ADHD. How's it going, Will?
Present.
All right. And I know
that's about how it's going.
Yeah, not feeling well either. I understand.
Yeah, a little bit of round 2 of COVID. So.
Oh, man. All right. Well, at least you got a really comfy looking shirt there. And we have Brendan Mahan, host of ADHD Essentials.
Yeah, I'm recovered from the allergy attack I had last time we spoke. And since then, I've gotten RSV and COVID. Doing okay, though.
Oh, my. Okay. So It sounds like we're riding the struggle bus here as a team. And we got ADHD reWired coach Kat Hoyer. What's going on, Kat?
I'm not sick.
Awesome. At least one of us as well here. And we got ADHD reWired coach Kristen Martz.
I'm only sick of things like cracked pipes at my daughter's apartment.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm sick with.
Just to clarify, there was an ED on the end of that, right? You're not like back in the 90s. Or there was no, I should say there was no ED on the end of that. There was
ED on the end of what?
Cracked like broken pipes.
There's no crack pipes. No crack pipes at your daughter's place.
I want to make sure I
Have
heard
we
you
not
right.
explained to Brandon about me? I am very naive. I get taught something new every day by Kat and Eric. Sometimes Lisa, sometimes MJ. Because that just didn't even float through my brain. I went, what? No, and I'm so flustered because I barely got here with the crack pipe. The apartment company, we called them yesterday. They're like, we'll send somebody tomorrow.
You just got to put down the cracked pipe.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe that's what I needed. Anyway.
All right. All right. And we have Lisa Ciesla, ADHD reWired's community manager, my executive assistant. How's it going, Lisa?
Oh, man. I'm great now. Whew. That was hilarious.
All right. And there's me, the host of this here podcast. All right. And our first person who is here to ask a question for us is Andy. How's it going, Andy?
It's going well. Thanks for asking.
All right. So tell us your question.
Well, I recently diagnosed with ADHD in the last year or so. I'm 60 years old, so I figured out a lot of the workarounds just to survive my whole life. But, one of the things that my doctor set me up on is like Strattera to help with meds. And we've even doubled the dose in it. I'm not really noticing anything. And because of changes of jobs and stuff like that, I don't have, I've just had my, personal doctor that's working on the meds with me instead of a psychiatrist or something like that. I'm just kind of looking for some suggestions on what to do with either meds or with hoping to get more focused.
Okay.
Because focus is really my biggest issue in life right now.
So I got a couple questions for you. How long have you been on the dose that you're currently on?
About coming up on 5 months, I guess.
Okay, so it's been a while. Do you live with anyone?
Yes, my wife.
Does she notice any difference?
No, not really.
Okay.
There's some days I used to go like weekends, I wouldn't take it at all because I'm like, well, I don't need to be focused on the weekends, but then I really don't notice either way. So
Okay.
it doesn't seem to make any difference.
And what dosage did you say you're on?
Basically, they have 40 megs twice, taken twice in the mornings.
Okay. And Strattera is the only medicine you tried so far?
Correct.
Okay. So obviously none of us here are doctors. So I just want to say that. We just play them on podcasts. Okay. So if you're not noticing anything and your wife is not noticing anything, I think it would be time to return to your doctor and let them know that. Because there's lots of different ADHD meds and something works for most people. But often it's not going to be the first medicine you try, right? Because sometimes what we see happen is that the person taking it doesn't really notice the difference, but everyone around them does, right? And so, but what you just shared, that's actually not even the case. And I think for most people, when they have that positive treatment response to meds, it should be pretty close to a wow.
Yeah, not getting a wow.
Kristen?
Okay, so I am a clinician, but I'm going to talk to you as experience as a mother with children who have tried non-stimulant. Strattera is a non-stimulant. One of the things that I have learned is that most medications, it depends on their half-life, but some medications you can't just take per day. Our stimulant meds, we can because of the fast half-life with it, and you can see the effects immediately. My understanding with Strattera was always that you've got to take it every single day because it's one that builds up in your system to be effective, kind of like our antidepressants. So having said that, that would be one of the first questions I would ask myself, and then maybe my doctor also, to find out, because I heard you say sometimes I don't take it on the weekends. And both my children have been on different kinds of mental health medicines, and we would get told that. And then in my work too, doctors would say, well, you can't take the weekend holiday on this med. And so that is something I would explore more of to make sure that for you, for your chemistry, your body chemistry and Strattera, because it still may be that it's not giving you anything, but it could also be that you haven't allowed it to build up to a therapeutic level.
Okay. For the last month, I've been doing it every day.
Okay.
I just take it with my vitamins. So it's still not big notice on that.
And was there a reasoning behind choosing a non-stimulant?
I used to have issues with high blood pressure. So I think that was the reasoning behind it
Okay.
a year ago.
I know about 10 years ago that there was a lot more caution when there was a history of high blood pressure. There's been some more updates in some of the prescribing protocols. So you might want to look into finding a specialist to get the, because I think that what's not uncommon is find the specialist to get the dosage right, and then you can use your primary care physician to just for the maintenance of that dosage. But generally speaking, non-stimulants work best when combined with stimulants. I have not heard many people that actually have a good treatment response to a non-stimulant alone. So,
Okay.
Brendan?
Recognizing that Andy is not the only person who is listening to the answer to this question. So this is not really for Andy. It's kind of for everybody else, because I'm going to rant about a pet peeve of mine, and it's not intended as an attack on Andy. My example that I often use is I don't wear my glasses on the weekends, which is bananas, right? Why would I not wear my glasses on the weekends? When I hear people talk about how they don't take their meds on the weekends because they don't need to be focused or they don't need to be able to attend, I'm like, but don't you though? If I'm not on my medication, I am not as safe of a driver as I am if I am on my medication, to go as basic as I can, right? But not even just that. I have to make sure I do the dishes. I need to be tuned into what my wife and kids are saying to me. So if you need the medication to go to work or to go to school, probably there's other places where it's also helping. So just as a thought, feel free to disagree with me and think that I'm bananas, but that's my little thing that makes me twitch.
Yeah. And it also can make the medication over time not as effective when we're not consistently taking it. Right. That's
right.
Old school thinking about those med holidays and taking the weekends off.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, it grows out of meds are bad and evil. And why would you put your kids on meds? And well, I put them on meds, but I don't make them take it on the weekend. I think that logic grows out of that defensive from parents from even still now, but more so back in the day. And it just kind of permeated everything and is not as obviously connected to that anymore.
Yeah. And this whole notion of like parents being quick to medicate their kids. I have never, ever, ever met a parent who was quick to medicate their kids, including myself. When I am completely pro-med, probably like more than most people even are.
Mhm.
I'm not playing this like it's a personal choice. Like, try the damn meds.
I did a workshop yesterday, so the stats are still in my head. And these are pre-COVID stats because like everything's a mess statistics-wise at the CDC. Massachusetts, 75% of parents medicate their kids with regard to ADHD.
75% of
75%.
Of parents who have kids who are diagnosed with ADHD.
Well, 75% of kids with with ADHD diagnosis.
You're
are
not saying
medicated.
75% of all the kids in Massachusetts
I'm
are medicated.
No. 75% of kids in Massachusetts with ADHD are medicated. And I admit that statistic is pre-COVID. So like it might be different now with more diagnoses and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Let's go, Kat, and let's get another question.
So I know that Andy was asking initially about medication, but and while I am definitely pro meds, there are other things that I think a lot of us do that help manage our ADHD. And Andy, you mentioned that you have your wife. So I think a lot of times if we do have a partner, that could be something without putting too much on them, kind of reflecting with them. And it's really, really, really important that we have a supportive outlet, because I speak from experience of not having that support and having someone who would berate me because of how ADHD manifested. So it's really, really important if you don't have that supportive outlet or people in your life to find others that understand ADHD. And that's where, we talk a lot about community. So I think that's an important aspect of managing ADHD. Another one I know Eric talks about, for him, it's exercise. For me, it's meditation. So we all have sort of different things that may be a bit of an anchor for us when it comes to helping us manage our ADHD outside of medication. So I just wanted to add those couple of things to it.
Thanks. All really great comments. Hope that was helpful, Andy, and for everybody else. All right, let's get our next question. All right, so Russ's question is, when a life catastrophe occurs, sometimes there is a fixer mode, other times there is an overwhelm mode, resulting in complete shutdown of all life events and routines. How to get past the hyper-emotional devastation and back into regularity without too much loss or damage too. Okay, Brendan, sounds like a wall of awful kind of question.
Yeah, it totally is. It's that I like the fact that you use fixer mode and overwhelm mode, because they're two distinct modes that we need to start paying more attention to as human beings. We process information emotionally, and we also process information in a more cognitive, intellectual, academic way. When we're in fixer mode, we're more cognitive. When we're in overwhelm mode, we're more emotional. And in order to move from emotional processing to cognitive processing or intellectual processing, we have to process the emotions. It's part of how you get up the wall of awful, is you've got to accept the emotions that are happening, acknowledge them, don't fight against them. Just think like, yeah, I'm pretty scared about this. I'm pretty anxious. I'm feeling humiliated. I'm feeling like overwhelm is a vague term, right? So we want to get more specific than overwhelm. What does overwhelm mean? Are you anxious? Are you feeling rejected? Are you feeling guilty and shameful because you keep making this mistake over and over again, and now it happened a fifth time or whatever, and it's catastrophic? Like, what's going on? Are you seeing a pattern, and that pattern is bringing up a ton of emotions?
So, Brendan, are you saying that deal with the emotion and dealing with the emotion is not necessarily dealing with the issue itself?
That's the work to get out of overwhelm mode and to get past the wall.
I think that's a really important distinction that I think that when we're trying to manage whatever the stressor is, it's and this is something that came from that was highlighted really well in the book Burnout. Talk about like to deal with stress. It's not about dealing with the stressor. It's about actually dealing with the stress itself, the actual physical components of that stress. They talk about completing the stress cycle, right? So if we get this flood of emotion and we're just sitting there in it, we're literally then sitting there in it. Like we have to move. We got to do something physical to get that, to process those physical emotional states. So I hope that was helpful. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, it looks like we have a question dealing with the gloomy days of winter. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from ARC, ADHD Rewired Coaching. Learn more about our coaching and accountability groups and how you can join us for our next spring registration event on Thursday, February 23rd at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern by going to coachingrewired.com and adding your name to our spring interest list. This will be your last chance to get $500 off select sections with ADHD Rewired coaches Kat Hoyer and Kristen Martz. The deadline to submit all pre-registration submissions is at 11:59 p.m., the day before our registration events. So go to coachingrewired.com to get started. Does it feel like you're constantly being swept away by the whirlwind of scattered lists, to-dos, and unfinished projects? Does the thought of planning ahead make you anxious? Or do you actually enjoy planning? But when the days and weeks arrive, you find yourself resistant to sticking to those plans, or you end up forgetting about the plans you've made. In our award-winning coaching and accountability groups, we empower our members by creating a safe and supportive environment that's shame-free and judgment-free. Our members not only learn how to better manage their calendars and create ADHD-friendly routines, they also learn how to ask better questions, set better boundaries, and communicate what they need to succeed.
I've learned that I don't need anybody else to define what successful means to me, and that I am pretty darn successful on a daily basis.
Yeah, learning to plan. Planning was probably my biggest thing, and the importance of, daily planning and thinking that through, whether it's the night before, the day or the morning of, and then also like yearly planning and how much that's going to affect me in the future.
Another thing about this group is that you learn and are held accountable for actually practicing the skills over and over again. And so that's been really, really helpful.
I really feel this way, that this changed my life.
When I think of success, I now focus on what is kind, compassionate, and possible. I try not to think about what I should or should have done or what people expect of me, and instead try to think of what I really want and what I think I'm capable of.
If you are thinking about joining this group, I'd highly encourage it. There was something amazingly special about growing with a group of people who all had similar struggles as I did. It was encouraging, it was safe, it was inspiring, and above all, it was healing.
If you're thinking about joining this group, do it. You need it more than you think. If you're stuck and you know you need that extra push to help reach your goals but don't know where to start here.
We've seen members change career paths, finish home renovation projects, launch their own businesses, improve their relationships, and so much more. Go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our spring interest list. Once you've added your name and confirmed your email, you'll receive instructions that include watching a 35-minute video presentation, answering some questions about that presentation, and then sending us a 45-second video all about you. Yes, our ADHD can get in the way sometimes, but that doesn't mean we can't live a full and intentional life. And when you've joined our intensive online coaching and accountability groups, you won't have to do any of this alone. Go to coachingrewired.com to start your pre-registration process so you can join us on Thursday, February 23rd at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you're listening to this after that, go to coachingrewired.com to get the most up-to-date information. Are you ready to get your ADHD rewired? Then go now to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from Adult Study Hall, our ADHD-friendly body doubling community at adultstudyhall.com. From our weekly guided sessions, also known as Adult Study Hall Plus or ASH Plus, to our 24/7 drop-in room, there are plenty of ways that you can utilize the power of real-time accountability to get those projects going and start crossing off those to-dos. If you are motivated by working with others while being able to talk through and check in on your progress, then join our ASH Plus sessions, which are our themed and guided sessions that happen every week. But if you prefer to work on your own, at your own pace, but still want some company, then drop in to ASH 24/7. It's open to you all day, all night, all week. Whether you need to clean out that closet or clean out that fridge, study or finish an assignment, sort out your paperwork, or write a resume, or more, we've got you covered. Join the virtual ADHD-friendly body doubling community created just for us by going to adultstudyhall.com. Give it a try. It is free for the first week to try and only $19.99 a month after that. And there are no commitments. You can cancel anytime. Come work with us. That's that's adultstudyhall.com. One more time, that's adultstudyhall.com. All right, let's transition back. Who wants to do it? Will, go for it. Oh, MJ's got it.
Well, this is awkward. And we're back.
All right. We got a question from Margaret. How to deal with the gloomy days in winter, northern U.S. My motivation is non-existent. All right. Well, Margaret, I also get the SAD as well. The seasonal affective disorder, and the struggle is real. All right. So, the things that we believe are most helpful, it's try to get morning sunlight to the best that you can. You can get a light box. Some of the commercial available light boxes actually aren't bright enough. So you have to really get like the really bright ones. And they have to actually be something that I learned a year or two ago is because you're trying to emulate the sun, you want that light box to be just above the eyebrows because that's where the sun is going to be. And based on all the stuff that I read about it, that's supposed to be the thing that helps. Exercise. I usually will try to increase the intensity of my exercise during kind of like February, March. That's typically for me when it gets kind of bad. So yeah, trying to really get as much light as you can. Will?
Yeah, I was also going to just emphasize too that go outside. It's gloomy, but the light outside is so much more intense than we think in terms of lumens. Like your typical room will have about 100 lumens. An overcast day is about 1,000. So it's way better to go out on an overcast day, still get that morning movement in. It helps immensely with motivation to have that kind of light. And also as an alternative to just buying like a regular like SAD light, just get like a light pad drawing pad for doing like sketches and stuff. Like they display a large amount of light and they're like a third of the price of a SAD light.
Are you talking about the ones that are like, I remember my mom used to use one. She used to do calligraphy.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like for like tracing and stuff.
Cool. I never heard of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're a lot cheaper because they're not designed to be therapeutic, but they put out the same bands and they are about just as effective from what I've read.
And I saw someone in the chat that said 10,000 lumens is the therapeutic level. Also vitamin D too. Some great stuff in the chat. Kristen?
Yeah, I was going to suggest also visiting your doctor about your vitamin D levels. I did mine a while ago, and my doctor wrote on the 10,000, whatever the unit thing is per day, forever. It says that we have a really, really high prevalence of vitamin D deficiency in lots of areas. And also, I learned that 10 minutes in the sun every day. Somewhere I read this, and I started teaching it to my kids because that's something a kid can do. And it's like what Will was saying, the outdoor, even in overcast, 10 minutes a day is helpful if that helps you get a measure and an understanding of you don't have to go outside for an hour. And intuitively, I'm thinking too, we stay indoors more when we're sad. We look at screens more when we're sad. That affects our sleep. I'm kind of wondering if, we mess with our circadian rhythms and makes it worse. And so maybe monitoring your level of intake of those things, also the blue screen, and then you stay up later and longer and on screens more, maybe monitoring that too and try to level that out.
I never could understand people who live like up in Alaska and like during the wintertime, it's just like dark all the time. Like that to me just sounds like the most torturous environment to live in. I guess it's the opposite in the summertime though. So, all right. So let's do this. We're going to take one more quick break here. I know it's kind of a quick segment because we need some more questions. So we're going to get some more questions, but we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from you. If you're listening to this right now and you're finding value in this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss out on our weekly episodes. Need links to resources mentioned in each episode or want to share this episode with someone because you think they'd benefit from the stories and strategies we share today? Go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast to find our show notes and links to every episode. And if you are listening to this right now on Apple Podcasts and you share this episode from the app to someone else with an iPhone and they open their podcast app, it will show that you recommended this show to them, which is kind of cool. If you enjoy this show, then you'll also probably enjoy our other shows from the ADHD Rewired podcast family, including Hacking Your ADHD with Will Kerr, ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, and ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. And stay tuned because we are getting closer to launching our next podcast with ADHD Rewired coach, licensed clinical social worker, dance instructor, Star Trek nerd, and parody songwriter Kristen Martz. Go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network to see all of our network podcasts. Then every second Tuesday of the month, join me and the ADHD Rewired team for our monthly live Q&A, which means that our next monthly live Q&A is today, February 14th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. The best way to listen live to interact with us is to join us live on Zoom by going to ADHDrewired.com/events. Discover more from ADHD Rewired by going to ADHDrewired.com. That's ADHDrewired.com. Support for this podcast comes from our patrons, our future patrons, our current patrons, our past patrons. Thank you to all of our patrons who give, who have given, and who are going to give each month at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. If you enjoy the show but want some extra perks, or you simply want to support our mission to help other adults with ADHD feel less alone, one ADHD story at a time, consider becoming a patron over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Support can start at any amount that makes sense to you, and you can get ad-free episodes when you become a patron at $5 a month. At $25 a month, you can join me for our monthly coaching call every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, which means our next monthly coaching call will be on Tuesday, February 28th. Many of our patrons give simply because they want to support the work that we are doing, and thank you if that is you. The Patreon contributions get put right back into this podcast to cover maintenance costs, hosting, editing, and my team, and we really do appreciate your support. So if it's in the cards for you right now, consider becoming a patron by going now to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thank you so much. And we're back. Awesome. Okay. All right. So we got Juliet is asking, Juliet wants to hear from us about our morning routines. Oh, and she's also willing to go live. Great. Hi, Juliet. How you doing?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Doing great. All right. So morning routines. Who wants to start? Okay, then. Will's going to start.
I can hear crickets.
Yeah. There's like morning routines. We have those? Yeah. I'm trying to figure out where to start because if I like go from like getting out of bed, there's obviously the bathroom essentials and stuff. Sometimes I will do a cold shower in the morning because that is something I enjoy. It is a sensory thing that I find very enjoyable. So I'm not recommending that for everyone. And then getting dressed, having coffee, making sure my kids are ready to go for school. For me, with the morning routine, it's about being like, okay, how am I getting ready for the next step in my morning? It's less about the things I'm doing. It's about being like, okay, kids, do you have your backpacks ready? Do you have socks with you? Or do you have to go back up to your room?
Every morning that conversation takes place.
Yeah.
We should really just
keep
socks downstairs. That would actually make a lot more sense.
And the same goes for me. It's like, am I going to be ready to go out the door in 10 minutes? Am I going to be ready to go out in 5 minutes? And doing all the steps in between, and less about the individual things that need to happen that morning. Because the only thing of the routine are like, okay, I'm going to have coffee. I'm gonna, I drink athletic greens in the morning, have that with my coffee, and that's about it for like those are like they have to happen. Like, because I would like to have more like, oh, I'm gonna shave every morning. And that does not happen every morning. I guess the other one that too, I do try to get outside in the morning to get some light in my eyes, which is helpful with my dogs who also need to go outside in the morning.
So I think that dogs are great for ADHD.
Yeah, it's anything that builds that mandatory routine in.
Kat, what about you?
So, piggybacking on exactly what Will just ended with, that mandatory routine, one of the things that helped me the most with my morning routine was when I started breaking it down into phases. So, initially, it was these are the things I have to do to keep myself and my family, that means my son and my pets, alive. Then it was what would be, kind of the next level of urgency. And then the other like nice to do's. Like I'd love to meditate and read and do all of those things. But when I started breaking them down into phases, it made it a lot easier. And of course, I add novelty with that by using apps that will count it down and I get to tick them off. Routinery is the one that I love to use right now, but I'm sure at some point that will get boring and I'll start to use a different one. The other thing is I accidentally have, instead of using the word phase, I typed the word, it like was a spell check thing. So I probably wasn't even spelling phase, but it changed it to party. And I liked that so much that now I just call it a party. And then I call it, like when I feed my animals, I call it the hobo zoo, which is, won't even go into why that is. But I kept trying to spell zoo and it kept spelling it XOO. And I kept that on there too. So now it's the Hobo Zoo Party. And it's just like I add those like fun things to it. And I just have a lot of fun in the morning with all of those silliness things. So yeah. And dance in the morning.
Awesome. So I have sort of two variations of my morning routine. One is when my son is at my house and the other one is when he's not. And when he's not, I typically need more accountability around my morning routine because my son, in a sense, gives me great accountability because I have to get him going, getting out the door. So my morning routine starts with, I usually wake up between 6:30 and 7. I go to the bathroom, wash my hands, put my contacts in, get my son up if he's there. I start making breakfast. Now, for my breakfast, I like 99% of the time, I make the same breakfast every morning because I don't have to think about it. My son likes a rotation of 3 different things, which is fine. So there's not that much variability is kind of what I'm saying with that. There are some days he has band, so I got to get him out the door early. When that is the case, I make sure that I pack my stuff to go to the gym the night before and get my lunch packed the night before. Because otherwise, I will come back home with every intention of just doing the thing real quick and then leaving. And I never leave. So having that urgency to get out the door is also helpful. And, I try to get exercise at least 4 times a week and with some accountabilities. And sometimes that's just like sharing a picture of what I'm doing. But that's kind of the gist of my morning routine. Anyone else have anything you want to add?
So I hate morning. I'll never love morning. It'll always be mean to me. And so some of the things I have learned about my mornings is I decided to time how long will it take me from waking up to getting my ass off the mattress. Not just my feet, not just my hand, not just my toes, but literally standing up. And if I do it in the most natural way, it's about 45 minutes. There's so much routine in our lives with children with special needs that I think I fight even now, even though they don't necessarily live in the home. I think I fight it now, the idea of a routine. So a lot of things I do is think, okay, what's tomorrow morning? Oh, good. I schedule a PT appointment early because it forces me to get up. So I think about that 45 minutes and that can vary. I still can be, like, get up, you got to leave, you got to leave, you got to leave. Cause my alarm clock is called my husband most days. I try to use the alarm clock and it's mostly, Chrissy Boo, your clock's going off. Turn it off, please. I mean, that's my alarm clock. I even have to make him call me because it's so easy to ignore it. So it's the idea of scheduling things in the morning that will get me out of bed that I appreciate or value. So that is a help to me. I also learned to have a second makeup bag. Yep. Sometimes I'm the one in the car going at the light, but it's like I plan for it. I plan for the light. I try to I got to leave 5 minutes earlier than I think I need to leave because I'm going to forget my phone or I'm going to forget my purse or I'm going to forget to grab my medicine thing. So mine is a lot about incorporating the plan Bs around what I'm going to miss, because I really just hate getting up in the morning. I like staying up later, and so that's harder for me.
Kristen, have you ever tried one of like the smart sleep apps that use the intelligent alarms that will that'll wake you up during the phase of sleep you're in?
Yes and no. And the first thing I'm going to say is I had one, and it does help, but the one that I had did a light in the room, and I woke up magically. The light would go first. I woke up magically. However, it has to start so early that it wakes up the hubby too early.
You don't want to wake up your alarm clock.
So, well, yeah, I mean, he's so routine and so good at it. I don't want to mess him up. That is part of the compromise sometimes when we have partners, because the light, I would wake up before I'd ever hear the alarm start also. But I could revisit the ones that are just the sound.
Yeah, I've been using Sleep Cycle, I think, for almost 10 years, I think. I just think it is such an amazing app. Like, because I used to every morning used to just feel like, oh my God, I just got hit by a truck. And it was like 3 hours until my brain would be functional. And Sleep Cycle is true. Like, I'm kind of functional by the time my meds and coffee are consumed. Brendan?
I'm up at 6:30. If Gavin is still in the shower, then I wait for him to get out of the shower, and then I take a shower. Or actually, then I make the boys breakfast. So breakfast is protein, plants, and pancakes. Protein is a hard-boiled egg or bacon. Plants is usually banana or raspberries, sometimes blueberries. And then the pancake is either a pancake or a waffle, but that's what they have pretty much every morning. And then I make sure Nate's up because he usually needs a little bit of help. He's not bad. He just needs me to stick my head in and be like, dude, get moving. And he's like, okay. And then he starts moving. And then I hop in the shower. I finish the shower. I usually have like 15 minutes to do something. So I might look at what I'm doing that day. I might do a form. I might lay down on my bed and be tired. It depends on where I am. And then at 7:35, I peel apples for my kids' lunch. I peel them, I cut them up, and then we leave for school at 7:45. And I am coming home on Mondays. I have a client, an 8 a.m. client. So I'm like home doing client stuff. And other days I'm either going into the woods to exercise, although it's getting too cold for that. Or like this morning, I had to do some supermarket stuff. So I just got the supermarket stuff knocked out first thing. And then it's the day, but it's pretty rigid. It's pretty like at this time I do this. And then at this time I do this. And then it's
Brendan,
the boys are in school.
Do you feel that there's all this sort of sense of freedom by creating rigidity around these, like the routine parts of your day?
Some of it is like stuff has to happen by a certain time.
Yeah.
Like the boys have to be to school by 8. Right. So, and if I have an 8 a.m. appointment, which is not uncommon, not only do the boys have to be home by 8 or be in school by 8, I have to be home by 8. So I really have to be dropping them off at closer to 7:50. Thankfully, the middle school is not that far away, but that's what creates the rigidity, and is that like, I've got this thing happening at this time and working backwards from that. And it's only an hour to get a lot of stuff done.
Because I know, one of the things we often talk about in our coaching groups is people like, well, that's so boring. It's like, it's great to have variability and novelty, but put it where it matters.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, if we can take some of the effort and energy away from what is demanded of our executive functions by really routinizing our boring stuff, like it's going to free up all kinds of processing stuff in our brain.
I don't have to think that much in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
And executive functions are the last thing to wake up, right? In the same way that they develop last as we grow up, and evolutionarily speaking, they develop last. They also wake up last. Like they're not online yet. And that's part of why I'm doing a lot of stuff for my kids, is because like your executive functions are even weaker than mine. I don't mind throwing together a breakfast. It means I'm making a ton of pancakes on Sunday. I'm not making pancakes. I'm pulling them out of the fridge, maybe toasting them, maybe not, and sticking them on a plate and handing them to my boys. And they get chocolate milk too. That's a 5-minute experience. It's not a big deal.
So so it's always funny when something sort of throws a wrench in your routine. Like this morning when we had to leave the house in 2 minutes, because it's a band day, so we had to leave earlier. And, one of the things I told Gibson, my 11-year-old neurodivergent son, is he's got to do his hair because it kind of looked like he stuck his finger in an electric socket. And so he says, Dad, I did my hair. I don't know if you're going to be proud or mad. I was like, oh God. I was like, what did you do? So we have this gel that I think we've used 3 times. It's like this gel where you literally take a little pea size amount and you mix it with water in your hands and you spread it all over the hair. It's literally like the name of it is something glue. Well, he used a little bit more than a pea size amount and didn't use any water with it. And I think the victory was while I was internally completely losing my shit. I think I kept my cool pretty well during all of that, because it was just like, oh God, like he tried. How cute is that?
Can I like be the educator guy for a second? Like I just want to be the representative teacher.
Yes, Mr. Mahan.
If your kid, if something like that happens and it's not going to mess up your schedule, because that's a different beast, right? If you've got something at like in 20 minutes, you need to be home. That's one thing. But if you've got a window, it does not matter if your kid is late to school. It just doesn't. And also like if your kid doesn't seem to have a problem with it, which Gibson obviously did, because he was like, I think this is a bad call. Like, I don't know if you're going to be mad at me or proud of me. That tells me Gibson was like, I don't like this. But if your kid is like, this is great, and you're like, dude, you just something about married your head. Like, you can't go to school like that. And your kid doesn't get it. Like maybe let him, depending on how bad it is. But if you need 10 minutes to clean the hair out, a lot of parents, and this is more for the audience than necessarily anyone else, but a lot of parents get really twitchy about my kid's gonna be late to school, and they feel the judgment, like the pressure judgment from the principal.
There's also the added piece though, if your kid's neurodivergent and getting there late is going to increase anxiety, and
that's there too, right? You got to know your kid, but control for the part of your brain that's like the school is going to judge me and find me wanting as a parent. Because that comes up a lot for a lot of parents who may not even know it, and it doesn't need to come up.
So I have a follow-up question, please, because I just went back in time, 20 good old years, and, more so than just doing your hair, I'd get one kiddo ready, the outfit on, and I'd turn around and try to get the other kiddo ready, and the panties would come off under the dress, and we wouldn't discover it till we were getting in the car. It was like, get back in the car, do that. So I don't care. I'm with you. I think there have one time to get to be a kid. You have one time to be tested as the parent, what kind of parent you want to be with that child for that moment of what's going on here. What individuality thing, what thing that's bothering them, to explore that and all of that. For the parents out there who are going, oh, hell no. I've been called to the principal's office before for being late, knowing I have 2 special needs child. Basically told there's going to be a big consequence. And they weren't joking around. And I was like, what the? I have enough to deal with. So what would you say to them about how do we manage that part of the conversation if that is what you walk up to?
Yeah. If you're in a boat where like the school is starting to say to you, like you're late too much, then you're late too much. Right. I meant like a one-off. Like it's not like a chronic thing. If a chronic thing.
Can you speak to that? If we already have that going on and
if you've got a kid with a 504 or an IEP, right? Special ed kids, get it in the 504 IEP. My kids have that in their IEPs and 504s.
Can we sort of,
because last year we had a lot of school stuff, a lot of school anxiety going on, and that affected us getting there on time. We put it in the 504 IEP, and it's not a big deal.
I think I'm asking as a parent who was ADHD and didn't know it. So didn't know how to have that conversation because it was in the IEPs. And so my language would come off as smartass at that point, going, what the hell?
Here's a piece of this that everybody needs to know. This is another like magic reveal. For most people, most parents, when you go into school, you become the kid that you were in school when you walk into that building, even if it's not your school. I've walked into schools with presidents of multi-million-dollar companies, like really significant bigwigs who I was consulting with, who walked into school and became totally disempowered because you become that kid. And where do you meet when you go into a school? In the principal's office or a conference room next to the principal's office, or you're sitting in this tiny little chair in the classroom if it's elementary school. I don't think they happen on purpose, but there's a lot of power moves that happen when you meet with a school that cause the parent walking in to feel disempowered, to feel like they're 12 again and they're in trouble because they're sitting in a principal's office. And it messes with us subconsciously. and we forget what we already know. And I suspect that's a piece of what was going on for you.
I've often wanted to, have my own IEP as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
It's that fear of, okay, what form am I forgetting to get back for him? Like it's as a parent with ADHD, that's something that like kind of kills me when like something has a negative impact on my son, that it was something that was my fault.
Just express it. Just say, here's what I'm going to do wrong.
Yeah.
Here's how I say that to schools. I'm like, here's how I'm probably going to mess this up because I have ADHD da-da-da. I just own my stuff when I talk to the schools, not if I'm consulting. If I'm consulting, it's a different beast. But with my kids, and I throw school staff off as a parent and as a consultant because I worked in schools.
Yeah.
So I'm not uncomfortable at all. I roll in there like I own the place, no matter what school it is. And they don't know what to do with me because that's not how the dynamic usually works. Usually any adult rolling into a school feels kind of like they're in trouble and they don't know why.
Juliet, thanks for sparking a fun conversation. Let's go to another question and let's see. How's it going, Jim? What is your question?
So I work in a college counseling center and I've got an executive functioning group with students. And accountability is kind of the next thing that's kind of I'm wondering about. How do I help students be more accountable? What are some ideas? How do I work that out?
Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts here about accountability. All right. So the first thing is they have to want it and they have to seek it. One of the things that I often see that people get wrong when they are trying to create these accountability structures is what they're actually doing is creating codependent structures. And so this idea of like, oh, I got this thing due. Will you call me to remind me to make sure I'm doing it? Like that's codependence. That is not accountability, right? Accountability is, hey, I got to start working on this paper. I'm going to send you a text showing you a picture that I've actually in front of my computer at this time. If I don't text you to show you that at this time, could you check in with me? Like that's where we're talking about accountability, right? Accountability also isn't anyone that's going to make you do something. Accountability is a mechanism to help you sort of verbalize and communicate whatever it is that you need to do. And if you didn't do the thing, like that's also okay. The idea is to then let's explore, let's follow up. In our coaching groups, we call it compassionate ass kicking. It always has to start with compassion because when you're dealing with ADHD, the amount of shame that we often carry from screwing stuff up, it is real. It is real. It is pervasive. And if not, I think handled with care can lead to even more mental health challenges, right? So it starts with compassion, but it can't end there, right? So the ass kicking part of it is, okay, like you didn't get the thing done. We get it. Like it was hard. All right. Is this still important to you? What's plan B? When's the next opportunity you can do this? So kind of asking those follow-up questions. Really, it's try to make that account, especially with college students, make it easy. Make it easy to be accountable. If you have to give some whole long report about what you did, like that's not going to happen, right? But if you can set up that accountability as simply as taking a picture of something, like let's say someone's having a hard time getting to class on time or showing up for their classes, maybe just taking a quick selfie, like when they're in class, just to show that they want to do that. But really, it's important that those things are empowered for the students. And I'd also say, and this is something we learned through our coaching groups, and this is with adults, is if you're doing accountability, have more than 2 people in the group. Because, if they all have ADHD, you need backups, right? Because someone's going to have an ADHD kind of day and go radio silent or, whatever. So having a couple people, if they're part of an accountability team, can be really helpful. How does that sound to you? And do you have follow-up questions?
Fantastic. Wonderful. And you've obviously got good experience and passion for it. So I appreciate
awesome.
it.
I wish there was something like that when I was in college. My support strategy was Adderall. That was it. MJ?
I don't have much to speak on this, but if it were me back in college, because I went through college the first time and I dropped out, and I went through the second time and I passed, both times not knowing that I had ADHD, but knowing what I know now, if I want to be held accountable, yes, I agree that I have to be the one seeking it. And I would want to be encouraged to do the thing versus being reprimanded or told, do this thing or else. Because I feel like when that was happening with me, that was more of a deterrent to actually do the thing versus like, oh, I actually want to try to finish this assignment. To what Eric said, like a lot of compassion with that. But of course, it doesn't stop at the compassion. It also has to start with maybe encouraging students to like have them ask themselves the questions of like, well, what can I do with this, or what's a different way that I could go about doing this? Something that I wish that I had as well was being encouraged to ask those questions of like, what are the alternatives of doing this thing to get to the same ending, right? Because 2 + 2 = 4, but so does 1 + 3. So does 3 + 1. So if it's still the same result, encouraging them to figure out different ways that they could still reach that same thing is something that I wish that I had, instead of it just being this one rigid thing. Because then I would have been more inclined to be accountable and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to try it this way. Like, I'll get back to you on how that's working.
And Jim, I actually have a follow-up question. If you're doing an executive function group on at your college campus, can you also organize like co-working spaces for those students? So they're just getting together so they're doing their own work, but together?
Yeah, maybe. That's the kind of ideas I'm looking for. What could I do? And if there's an idea, I'll follow it through to see if it's possible.
Because we do have our adult study hall, which is a virtual co-working community. So it's people just hop in and kind of do their work while they're on Zoom. And it's one of these things where it's like, is it really that effective? And for a lot of people, it really is that effective. Not for everyone, but no strategy is going to work for everybody.
Yeah. So I could have rooms set aside, but also maybe a Zoom part of that, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Kat.
I think when Eric, you and I did the accountability talk at CHAD, we just did one, Jim, this last CHAD conference. And I think the piece out of all of it that was the most impactful for me to hear, even though I teach this and I practice it and all of that, I pulled up our talk, and it's the piece that says accountability is simply accounting for what you did or didn't do based on previously shared intentions. And I just think that simplifies it down into like such a easy to understand model.
Brendan.
I just want to play with codependency for a second. Because you said, like, if a kid is like, remind me, I think that was your example, like, remind me to do blah. You were like, that's codependency. That's not accountability. I agree. And a freshman is not a sophomore, is not a junior, is not a senior, right? So if a freshman is like, remind me to do blah, they might need to start there, and you might need to scaffold them to accountability, which means you're going to need a plan for how to get them to accountability. But you might lose a freshman that you're trying to help because they're used to all of their lives. That's how it worked. And they don't know how accountability goes. And accountability might feel like judgment and like shame and guilt, and you might lose them. So you might need to have a plan for what to do with freshmen in terms of like they went their whole lives and people just were like reminding them to do. And you might have a policy where like you get 3 reminders and that's it. Or you might get reminders until October or something. Like, I don't know what makes the most sense. You might have to have a couple of different policies depending on the kind of kid you're working with. But I would say don't totally rule that out, because part of special education is that meeting them where they are and getting them to where they need to be. So
yeah, I think that's great. Accountability is also so relationship based. And so with that idea, I would also highly, highly, highly encourage for any college student who's listening to this is to have regular meetings with your professors. Use those office hours. They actually, like, it's one of the things that most professors say they look forward to the most. And they are frustrated when students don't use the office hours because they want to build those relationships with those students. And the other, if a student's like, well, I don't really want to do that, explain to them that even though your grade is based on a percentage, it is a human being who is actually inputting that percentage into the computer to give you your grade. So if you are on the cusp of 2 different grades and you have shown a lot of effort and you have engaged with your professor and you show up to the office hours, there's a good chance that you might get that little bit of a boost. Like, oh, that paper was an 88. It was a 90. They put in a lot of effort into this, right? So I think that's also a really important point, that relationships matter in terms of accountability. Thanks, Jim, for your question.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to another question.
Please explain and tell how to prevent and get rid of doom piles and or boxes. Sounds like a decluttering question.
So the way I am dealing with that, next Saturday and the following Saturday, I have scheduled a professional organizer coming to my house finally for the first time. This has been something I've been saying I'm going to do for years. So that's one way. Kristen, do you have another one?
Oh no, that was a joke going, ask me, ha ha ha. Yeah, no, I'm Queen of Doom Piles. I don't have Doom Piles. I have Doom neighborhoods and Doom cities that I work on. I have lots of ideas around it. One of them is join us and come to clean with me. Our facilitator of that group is amazing. We all chat all the time, and we have lots of strategies that help each other out. I mean, I don't mean for that to sound like a commercial promo, but doing it with that body doubling aspect and then getting some insight into what has everyone else been reading and trying to learn and discover about has been helpful. I've made progress. So I am a hoarder of therapy supplies mostly and hobby stuff.
It's definitely important to not add a promo for AdeleStudyHall.com.
Yeah,
Kat, go ahead.
No, okay. No. So I actually, for me, I still work on some of these things, but once I realized like what kind of Doom piles worked for me, it was a lot easier to create an environment that worked for me. There's a test that you can take called Clutterbug, and you can see what kind of clutterbug you are. I don't remember what I am. I think I'm like a butterfly or ladybug. I don't remember, but my type of clutter, I like for things to be, so if you can see, I've got like these baskets behind me. I like for my clutter to be in baskets, and I can tell you what's in each one of those. One is for me, one is for my son, one is for my dog, but I do better if they are things that I can't see. There are other people that want to see their things, so clear bins are better for them. And once I realized that, I was able to incorporate that into my decor, and I was able to get a better handle on my clutter.
What if instead of calling them a Doom pile, we call them quest piles? Because then it's like there's a quest in this pile. It makes it sort of seem more fun. I guess
that is one of my biggest techniques, Eric. Is that I do literally call them neighborhoods, homes, until they get to an actual home. And I even have like dorms, and I have like mobile units, and like those are in transit to someplace else. I mean, I do use that. That's actually
I think
helpful.
we're going to need to explore that idea in more depth. That's awesome.
Like super sophisticated.
Brendan.
Yeah. I have a few different things I do. One, when I've got a Doom pile, it means I haven't touched it in like a month at least, probably, right? So I go back through them after a month or two or three or whatever. And I'm like, how much of this stuff actually matters? And I get rid of like 2/3 of it at least, if not more. Because a lot, and not just how much of it doesn't matter anymore, how much of it is expired. Like how many of these are like, you could take this class that happened 2 months ago and you can't sign up for anymore. Like that happens too, right? But so that's one strategy, is that helps cut it down. But the other stuff is like making it more engaging and fun to do, right? And but before I go there, I also have to do this when no one is home. Like I want to own that, right? Because there's some shame wrapped up in these Doom piles. And if my wife is home, especially, that shame is more pronounced for me. Unless her presence is causing me to feel accountability and doing body doubling stuff, which sometimes that's the case, but oftentimes it just makes it harder because there's shame wrapped up in it, and I need to do it by myself when no one's around. So that's a piece of this. But the ways I make it more fun, there's sort of two pieces to this. One is I just listen to music. I'm just going to play some music that I enjoy.
Essential. I can't clean without music.
Yeah. And the other thing is, these Doom piles and boxes, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but most of it's paper, right? Start a fire. Not in your house unless you have a fireplace, but like get a fire pit, if you have a fireplace, great. Sometimes it's fun to just burn the stuff because it's more engaging. like I'll do that sometimes. And if it overwhelms my fire pit because there's too much stuff, then I'm like, I'll just recycle the rest of this stuff. But like, if I'm putting stuff in a box and I'm like, I'm going to burn this, like I'm much more interested in like doing that later. And then I invariably, it's more than my fire pit can handle because I'm not having a bonfire because my yard is too small. And then I'll just recycle the rest of it. But that's a way, like come up with stuff, even if it's like a paper shredder is engaging for you. I can't do that because I'll have an allergy attack to the dust. But like whatever's going to make it more engaging so that you can get some of it done. And also moving forward, label your boxes with what's in them so that next year you can look at that box and go, I don't need anything in here. Like, why was I so passionate about checkers? What the hell is this? Why do I have a whole box that's nothing but checkers? Like just throw that out.
At home, I got a couple bins of just random papers and stuff that I look at them like I don't know what to do with it. And I was talking with this professional organizer who's I'm going to be starting with next week. She was saying, we're going to try to get your system set up so then you don't need me to come back. And I said, well, that's actually how I want to work differently with you. I actually want you to come back probably once every month or two, because I can guarantee you I am not going to maintain this.
Oh, and can I play with emotion stuff for a second too? Here's a fun one. I wicked have to clean my office. I've had to clean my office for several years now. It's a horrible nightmare. It makes me sad. Here's why. This is why my office is a mess. It was great. It was lovely. It was wonderful. We had to clean a different part of the house. A lot of the stuff in that part of the house got shoved into my office and everything fell apart. My wife knows to not do that again because she didn't realize it was going to mess me up as much as it did.
I feel that.
Somewhere in some box in this office is my application to be a licensed special education teacher, which part of my brain feels like I need to complete because what if? I've been doing this for 5 years now. I'm not going to be a special education teacher. That's dumb. Cognitively, I know that I can throw that box out and it won't matter. But emotionally, I feel like need to be really careful about what I just pitch, because what if I pitched that? That's a lot of work to have to redo, except I would probably have to redo it anyway because it was 7 years ago. And I'm not going to do it. Do you know what I mean? That ADHD irrational emotionality happens to all of us. So try to think your way through it if you can. Once I have time to tackle this office, I'm just pitching stuff. I'm not going to worry about that special education thing. But that held me back for a long time.
MJ.
I'm going to start off by saying simple is not easy, but an idea that has helped me. I'm surprisingly good at managing my doom piles because I try my absolute best to not have them, because then that's the only thing I can think about. But when I do find myself in a doom pile, I like to sort that pile out into 3 or 4 other separate piles, which I know sounds overwhelming, but hear me out. So the first pile is, when I'm sorting it out, is keep. The second pile is rehome. So maybe the thing that I'm finding in that doom pile doesn't actually belong there. The third is, and it needs to be in a box, 30 to 90 days. If I haven't used the things in that doom pile for a certain amount of time, it goes there, and I seal that box, put a date on it. If I haven't used what's in that box that's been closed and sealed for, again, between 30 and 90 days, it depends on the rule that I set, it goes to donation, because then it is gone. And then, of course, the last pile is just immediate trash. And that I find that when I have a doom pile, then I'm like, where did all this come from? It doesn't even have any rhyme or reason. Is what am I keeping? What am I rehoming or repurposing? And does it belong in that space? 30 to 90 day rule of in a sealed, closed box with a date on it, and whatever immediately needs to go. Because the advantage that I've found for me doing this is having that box of things that I don't know what to do with, but I also haven't used them in a while. If I can replace them for less than $10, then that's fine. Because maybe there were things I only needed once or twice a year. And that really just helps to sort out with, what am I going to keep? What do I really need? Am I keeping things just in case? And I think I said it a couple monthly Q&As ago, is what is the cost of storing those things? It's not just the space, it's the mental space, it's the emotional space.
That idea of the just in case. I remember when I was moving about 4 years ago, and I was listening to The Minimalists, and that just in case thinking, I did not realize how pervasive that thought was in my brain when it came to keeping stuff. And so, Angela, what you had said is what's the cost of replacing it versus what's the cost of keeping everything just in case, right? And so if something is, maybe $10 to replace, and you have, 5 of them, there's nothing wrong with the thing that you're getting rid of. Just get rid of it, and it's because it's all that stuff. It's not benign. When you have so much stuff, then you have so much stuff. And it's hard to do the stuff that you actually want to do because you have stuff everywhere, right? Man, no, stuff is hard. It just is. It's hard to, I love the whole adage of we need this whole industries of containers just to organize all the stuff we don't need anymore, right? All right. I know we have a couple other questions here. One was about ADHD and depression. The other one was about overwhelm. I'm going to invite those 2 people to come back next month so we can answer those questions for you. I want to thank everyone for asking your questions, all of our panelists, and I want to hand it over to Will for our moment of dad.
This one comes from my 7-year-old. What should you never eat on New Year's Eve? A firecracker.
Nice. There it is. There's Kristen.
Sorry, I wasn't unmuted because I know y'all love it because I laugh wholeheartedly at the dad jokes. They're awesome.
All right.
I love you, Will. You make my week. You make my month every time.
That marks
Eric, I need to take that air horn off of that thing. Oh my God.
That marks the end of our monthly live Q&A. We will see you back here next month, same time, same place. Thank you, everyone. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, don't forget to do that. And we'll catch you next month. Thanks, everybody. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD reWired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD reWired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD reWired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD reWired podcast network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD reWired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD reWired, click the button to be a guest at the top of the page, and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.